You're listening to the Valley Current.
There used to be a belief way back 60 or 70 years ago that horses and other ungulates, I think they're the class ungulate,
Okay.
aged because their teeth wore down and they're unable to chew food.
They would look in the horse's mouth and see what was going on with the horse's teeth to make a statement, right?
Exactly. Yes. And that was the belief.
Right.
That'd be nonsense. We could tell a horse's age by how far down the teeth had been worn. But that goes on and on and on and on, and it's just nonsense. People don't understand the difference between longevity determinants and aging. And they don't understand that aging is a result of the thermodynamic instability, which occurs in everything that you can see from where you're sitting or where you will ever be sitting and standing, because it's universal. The time scales are different. Your aging is a time scale very much different from the time scale of the aging of your computer in front of you, anything else that you can see from where you're sitting. It's the same process of thermodynamic instability.
Right.
And that applies to the cosmos as well. It is known to occur in stars. Stars age.
Right.
They actually age. That's not a surprise.
Well, the universe is aging and the Earth is aging, and I guess
so why should animals be any exception?
Right.
And for the same reason.
Well, there's certainly this. I think there's going to be in the next 20 to 50 years so much more attention on the aging process than we've historically given it, because people sort of have more time in some ways, you could argue.
Well, if you read the document that I have as a link on all of my email messages.
Right.
I don't know whether you read that document or not.
I have, yeah.
You understand that there is no research going on currently on the etiology of aging. Zero, none. Zip. And I quoted, you see where I quote the directors of the NIH, of every major, and the NIA, the National Institute on Aging, every institution in this country, the leadership says aging is the greatest risk factor for death. Yet they do nothing in respect to research on the subject. So your statement, although it's logical and I agree with it, is falling on deaf ears.
Well, maybe it's
There's rarely a week that goes by that I do not send a message to the organizations listed in that document.
Right.
I sent to you.
Yeah, it's the paper you did. I put it on the screen just to kind of. It's the paper you did last year that was published by Springer, and
correct.
That has kind of the interesting dramatic title: "The greatest risk factor for the leading cause of death is ignored."
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. No one. I should tell you that I have had no one write to me and said that I'm wrong. Nobody. I'm waiting for that first call. I'm waiting for the first one.
Well, I think the guy that would make that call was recently subject to some sort of sexual harassment charge. So you may not. He may be busy with his lawyers at this point.
His input is not serious, so it doesn't matter.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, there are a group of people that want to believe that there's some likelihood that something will reverse aging or something will delay aging.
Then why did Aubrey shift? And this is historically demonstrable. Why did Aubrey shift from the founding of his company with the millions he got from the PayPal executive,
Yes.
founder.
Yes.
Why did Aubrey shift from, this is historically demonstrated, go back and look at his literature.
Right.
The purpose of his company was to interfere and either reverse or stop the aging process.
Right.
But when he got enlightened, either by me or someone else, and I will not take credit for it.
Right.
When he became enlightened that was a stone wall through which he will never pass, he then shifted to what everybody else has done when the same situation has arisen, and that is to focus on age-associated diseases. If you look at the website even today after he is lost, you'll see that that's what the focus is on.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that, except that people who found companies, and there have been hundreds of them, in an effort to interfere with the aging process and ultimately decide that it's impossible, they end up doing the same thing, that is focusing on age-associated diseases research.
Right.
And then they're in direct competition with big pharma.
Right.
Competition with Merck and Pfizer and every other major pharmaceutical company, because they are all engaged in research on age-associated diseases. And every physician in this country, as a result of the reduction of deaths early in life, at least from the point of view of statistics, every physician in this country, and I've told this to my own physician, and my own daughter is a pediatrician, and she agrees, that every physician today has been forced to become a geriatrician, regardless of what they trained to be. I have found nobody willing to argue with me, by the way, nobody who is allegedly in the various fields that we discussed. I found nobody willing to argue with me about any of the points that I've made.
Well, I think
mostly because they have a vested interest in what they have been advocating.
I think that's the nature of the beast, which is that people get locked into an approach, right? They get locked into an approach,
right? And
they can't really unlock whatever approach they choose to take, because the inertia of whatever that vested interest is continues to play out over time. And that's probably true of big pharma. That's probably true of just about everything. But I do think we're going to see more and more activity. So I do think you are going to get some people that are either going to chime in or they're going to challenge, because they want to believe that they can push the limits out to maybe like 150 or 160 years old. Now, it generates lots of other problems, including just what kind of care do you get at the end? Because I have to tell you, there's no way to live being in bed all day. That's the one thing that only if you experience it face to face do you realize, if your lifespan trumps your health span, which it typically does, those last couple of years are pretty nasty. Even if you can live at home, and a lot of people can't, because they don't have kids that are necessarily going to want to be occupied or going to want to.
We only have ourselves to blame for that, because we should have been dead at the age of 35 or 40.
Well, once reproduction was over, is your point, right? You've kind of
some arbitrary age far below the current life expectancy of 79 or 80 years.
Yeah, man, I have to tell you, the lawyers in England typically retire at the age of 55. I was like stunned that, 30 years of law was good enough for them. They were like, 30 years of law is more than enough, and then they retire. And I always thought, man, you only get really good after 30 years. You need to stay in the profession for another 20. But maybe they're right. Making room for younger people is not a bad idea. And the licensed professions can open up the gates a little bit and allow younger people in. But I don't know whether that's true for like medical doctors and others. It seems like more of them are staying in the profession longer on the belief that they're going to have a long lifespan, so they should have a longer work span. And with the longer work span will somehow come a longer health span. I don't know that those three things necessarily go together, frankly, because I think a lot of stress that occurs from your work life shortens your health span, at least in some professions, for sure. Like, I don't know how people do certain professions in their 50s and 60s that are really challenging in my book.
You mentioned lawyers in the UK. Are you familiar with that series of programs about a British lawyer?
Is it Bailey at the bar or something like that?
Something at the Bailey.
Right. Yeah. It's a funny story.
Fantastic.
Right.
I bought the tapes for the entire series.
Right.
And I was going to offer them to you, but you've seen them. So
no, I know the stories. I mean, some of them are really funny. And I think there have been some TV shows in the U.S. that have been based on those films.
Yeah, something of the Bailey. I can't think of the first of his name.
It's really a story of what it's like to be a barrister in England. And my first partner was actually a barrister, Daryl Nelson. She died at a young age. I mean, talk about aging. She died at about 60, 65, 66, maybe 68. And just very sudden pancreatic cancer or some sort of cancer, very, very sudden. I mean, I remember having dinner with her. She had retired from the practice of law. And the next thing I hear from her husband is she's deceased. And he's asking me whether I would help with the eulogy and help. And she was a big churchgoer, so she got a lot of people to show up at her funeral. It was quite a big event. But yeah, I mean, it was really surprised me when I saw what happened. She had been a barrister in England. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, getting back to the subject we were discussing, I'm still waiting for an organization in this country or elsewhere to focus on supporting research on the etiology of aging.
And it sounds like that's something that should almost become like foundational to some sort of nonprofit, right? Like that should actually be something that's driven,
several
right?
Organizations start out that way.
So I put up what you were thinking about, Rumpole of the Bailey. That's the beauty of having these online resources. You can immediately do the search and boom, it's a British television series created and written by the British writer and barrister John Mortimer, and it's very, very funny and very well done.
Did you see it on tapes, or how did you see it?
I think I was at one point asking my partner Daryl what was some of the funny stories, and she said, "Oh, you should just watch this show that was done because it's so accurate."
Where did you watch it? Because it didn't appear in this country.
I think she had some tapes, or she had it, or she brought some from the UK. I mean, she used to say, funny remarks like he would say something like, she who must be obeyed was like his wife.
Exactly.
Referred to her, she who must be obeyed. Like that was always sort of a funny thing.
He used to mutter something under his breath in courtroom. And the judge would say, "What did you say?" Like the judge heard him say something nasty.
Right.
He would say something completely different.
Right.
That's John Mortimer. John Mortimer was an attorney himself.
Right.
And so he knew a lot of this stuff, of course.
Oh yeah, but just the content. I mean, it's a little bit like if you've experienced stuff firsthand, you can write about it with authenticity, because it's a little bit like the stuff that I've learned over the last, now seems like a couple of years, in watching really the end of life and what that entails, the loss of hearing, the loss of eyesight, the loss of appetite, the
Well,
loss of
there's a
mobility.
line in Shakespeare that says exactly that.
Right.
Sans teeth, sans this, sans that. I don't know what play it's from. I don't remember, but it's been observed, of course.
It's really true. And I have to say, you're such an interesting contrast, Len, because you're so active and you're so able to take care of yourself. I just like to contrast you, because you're like the best example of anti-aging that can be ever explored. And Peter Attia should have you on his show, and I should send this link to him, because you're like the great example of what he should aspire to, which is
I appreciate that, but there are plenty of people who are even at age 100 who are active and vital and aware, and their brains are functioning as well as they did 30 years or 40 years prior. In fact, there was a very interesting TV show recently. Was it 60 Minutes?
Yeah.
The group of Jewish escapees from Nazi Germany. You saw that?
I saw that. Yeah, it was really well done. And
there were a couple of guys there who were 90-some, in their late 90s. One was 100. They were functioning perfectly.
Right. There's a story in the newspaper yesterday, or maybe even today, about a 106-year-old World War II veteran that tells the stories about how we kind of outmaneuvered the Germans by using an inflatable resemblance of a tank. I never even knew that story, that apparently we blew up with, air, fake looking tanks on the German front.
I remember those.
He's 106. He just recently died. There's still a few people alive from World War II that can talk about, the various engagements that occurred. I wanted to bring this podcast to your attention and the show notes, because I thought to myself, man, is this another example of like the beginning of a marketing pitch for another snake oil formulation, or is there something here? I mean, Peter is from Stanford, a pretty bright guy. He doesn't typically do anything commercial. I was wondering if there was going to be some marketing pitch by the end of it, but he claims the drug rapamycin is generic now because the patents have all expired. He doesn't really say how you get it. I don't know if there's actually a way you can buy it from a local Walgreens.
I'm sure there is. It is not a compound that's on any drug list that requires some legal reason to obtain. I'm sure it's available. There are lots of people working with it or had worked with it. I don't know how many people still are and how many got discouraged, but it is certainly available.
Yeah, but I think they're saying it's for research only. I just did a quick
Well,
search.
That's true of thousands and thousands of compounds to protect the manufacturer from people like ex-President Trump.
Right.
He advocated the use of, was it an insecticide or they need to protect themselves from stupid people who may ingest the material they're selling. And so it's always listed for research purposes only. But that doesn't preclude you from buying it.
How would you buy it? Where would you buy it from?
Well, could you plug in, or I'll do it here, but I'll lose your image because I don't know how to do the.
Well, I'll
put rapamycin in your search engine.
Yeah, and just look to see what comes up, because
see what comes up. Yeah.
You think it actually will say, well, here's one that says, shop rapamycin, ordering is fast and easy. So maybe you're right. Maybe you just buy it online.
Of course. So go to one of those sites and tell me how much you're charging.
Okay, so I'll put it up and you look at it. Says it's a powder. Hold on a second, I'll show you what's here. I was kind of surprised they didn't do this because they said they were actually taking it themselves. But here's something from a company called Grainger.
Yes,
Grainger.
That's a big company that handles obscure research chemicals.
So here's something. 1 milligram powder, 500
milligrams. Well, it says less than $100 for a milligram. That's a hell of a lot of money for a milligram, but you dilute it, and you've got enough for many experiments. And anyhow, you can buy it. You can buy it if you want. So, and it probably says somewhere in the company's statements that everything they sell is for research purposes only.
Oh, but that's just a protection. That's just a protection.
It's allegedly a legal protection. I mean, you can't prevent people like President Trump from arguing that you should take.
He had some cocktail of some sort, right? Yeah.
You can't prevent people from advocating that, even the President of the United States.
Right. It's true. Hey, Len, thanks for spending the time with me. This has been very helpful. I appreciate all your input. You look great.
Thank you very much. And I had thought that you would be returning to California soon, but I'm obviously wrong.
You're right. We're going to deal with all the funeral arrangements here. So
sure.
I have to say, I think you're in way greater health than most of the folks that I've been around here that have been in their 90s. So keep it up.
Well, you are in a state where the average age is probably 90.
Well, I'll tell you something. When my mom first moved to Florida, she said to me, I don't like it here. This was 20 years ago. I said, why? She said, you know how long it takes to check out at the Safeway? Here it's called Publix. There's a lot of old people. They're so slow. And then, of course, when she got to be close to 90, she was like, she couldn't go shopping anymore. And I said, you remember how you talked about that? She said, yeah, we want to live fast, but we can't live fast forever. So anyway, good talking to you, Len. I have to go. Talk to you later. See you later.
Okay. Thank you, Jack.
Tune in next time on The Valley Current.